Gittin Daf, the Gemara concludes its discussion of the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim with a number of stories about the tragedies that occurred at that time as well as at other times, and then the Gemara returns to the halachos of Sekrikon, which are mentioned in our last Mishnah. Let's begin. The Gemara is discussing the destruction of Veitar. The Gemara now wants to say about how many people, how much tragedy was there, how many people were killed in the Beitar massacre. So the Gemara has three versions as to how you can measure it by the number of tefillin that were found. Rabbi Bachana says it was 40 saw of tefillin boxes. Rav Yanai, son of Yishmael, says it was 3 boxes of tefillin, 3 containers filled with tefillin, and each one measured 40 saw for a total of 120 saw. And there's a brisa that says it was 40 boxes, each one containing 3 saw. Now, according to the first opinion, it had 40 saw total. According to the second and third opinion, it had 120 saw total. How does that fit? The Gemara says one is talking about tefillin of the hand, and one is talking about tefillin of the head. Tefillin of the head are much larger, therefore the 120 saw refers to tefillin of the head, while tefillin of the arm refers to, that's the one that's referred to by the 40 saw, which takes up much less space. Now the Gemara brings a number of their stories. The Gemara says that there were 4 measures of brains that were found on one stone from children that had their brains beaten out. Ula says there were 9 kavana of brains of Kahana, or possibly of Shila Bamari, said that the pasuk that hints to this is Bas Bavel Ashtuda Asher Sheishalem Melach, that the violated daughter of Babylonia, who will be repaid, that is, it will receive the punishment that it meted out, because it says Asher Sheichas Venipit says Alay Chalasala, somebody will clutch the children of Bavel and bash their heads against the rocks. So that is payment for what they did to Klal Yisrael. Another incident that is discussed is based on the pasuk B'nai Tzion Hayikarim Misulayim B'Puz. It calls the children of Tzion Misulayim with puz, which is a type of fine gold or jewel. So the Gemara says, what does Misulayim mean? So if you want to say that Misulayim means that they are adorned with it, so that can't be, because we learned in the Be'er B'Shila there were only 2 istira weights of puz that came down to the world. One is in Rome, and the other one is divided up amongst the rest of the world. So Eretz Yisrael's share is not enough to make all the puz that's required for this. It means that they were so beautiful that puz was embarrassed. They put the beauty of puz to shame with their own beauty. And now we have a story that shows that the rich people of Rome would have beautiful figurines during their marital relations in order that a child that's born from that union should be beautiful. But they replaced that with Jewish boys and tied them to the bed so that they could see them and serve that function in a more beautiful way. Now, there was one boy who was subject to this. He had to go through this, and he asked his friend, where is this punishment mentioned in the Torah? So he said, every disease and every wound which isn't mentioned in the Torah, it's the end of the Torah, it says that is referring to something that's unmentionable, and that refers to this. So the first one said, how come I didn't get up to there yet? How far am I from that? When am I going to learn that? And so I said, another column and a half in the Torah, and the first one said, well, if I had seen that, if I got up there, I would have understood it to mean this just like you did. Next story, the Gemara says, what's the meaning of my eyes have brought me grief over all the daughters of my city? What does that refer to? So it says there were 400 shuls in Beitar. Each one of them had 400 Abayim, and each one taught 400 Talmidim. And their plan was that when the Romans came into their city, they would attack them with a bunch of sticks. However, the enemy were able to beat them, wrap them in their own svarim, and set them on fire. And Brisa has another story. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah went to a big city in Rome, the capital probably of Rome, and they told him that there's one child who's in prison here, and he has beautiful eyes, he looks beautiful, he has curls of hair. So Yeshua ben Hananiah went and stood at the entrance to the prison, and he said, Apasak mi naslam shisa Yaakov Yisrael v'ezim. Who's given Yaakov over to be ruined and Yisrael to be destroyed? So the child answered, Halai Hashem zu chatanu v'lai v'lai avu v'drachav halai v'lai shamu b'say rasay. It's Hashem, because we brought upon ourselves, we sinned against Kadosh Baruch Hu, and fathers didn't want to do what Hashem said and didn't listen to the Torah. So Yeshua ben Hananiah said, I'm certain that this boy is going to end up being a great Talmid Chacham and a Paisik halacha, so I swear I'm not going to leave him here. I'm not going to leave this place until I've redeemed him for whatever money they want. And that's what he did. He redeemed him for a large amount of money, even though we've learned halacha, you're not supposed to do that. but here this was an exception. And a short time later, he indeed became a tremendous Talmid Chacham and a Meir Hira, and it was Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. Now, the Gemara mentions the son and the daughter of Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, the Kohen Gadol, an ancestor probably of this Yishmael ben Elisha mentioned in the previous story. And this is a story that's mentioned in our Teichacha, in our Kinnis, we say on a Tisha B'Av, that he had a son and a daughter that were captured, and they were each sold to a different master. And those two masters met each other and remarked on the beauty of their captives. One said, I have a male slave who's the most beautiful in the world. The other one said, I have a female slave who's the most beautiful in the world. They said, you know what, let's put them together in a room and let them marry each other, and we'll divide the babies. So they put them in the room, and they each sat in a corner and minded their own business. They don't have anything to do with the other. He said, I am a Kohen, son of Kohen Gedalim. How can I marry a slave woman? She said, I'm a Kohenes, daughter of a Kohen Hagadol. How can I marry a slave? In the morning, they recognized each other as brother and sister, hugged each other, and cried until their souls left them. And that's what it says. In Yirmiyah al-Elani Bachia, Eini Yerdamayim, for these I cry, my eye runs with water. Now, another story, Rish Lakish says that there was a woman by the name of Tzafnas, the daughter of Peniel. She called Tzafnas from the word Tzafa. Everybody would stare at her beauty. She was the daughter of Peniel from the Kohen Gadol who went Lefnai v'Lefnim. She was captured, and her captor abused her for an entire night, and then he put her on 7 robes and took her out to the market to sell. It was a very ugly man who came, and he said he wants to see her. So the captor said, what do you have business seeing her? You want to buy her? Buy her. Trust me, there's none as beautiful as her in the world. And the man said, I want to see her anyway. So he took off 6 of her robes, and she ripped the 7th and rolled on the dust and said, if you don't have pity on us, why don't you have pity on your own name? Look at the Schil Hashem. And about her, Yirmiyahu says, daughter of my people, wrap yourself in sackcloth and roll in the ashes. Mourn bitterly as an only son, the most bitter crying you can, for the attacker came suddenly upon us. It does not say alayich, on you, it says aleinu, as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying he comes on me as well. Next, the Gemara brings one final story, and this is the epitome of the Aveira, which caused the Churban. So the Gemara says, the story of an outrageous behavior by an apprentice, somebody who was working for someone else to learn a trade. So the apprentice and the master. And the Gemara quotes the pasuk v'ashku gever v'esai v'ishnach lasai. They oppressed somebody and his house and a man and his inheritance. So the story was that the apprentice had a taiva for the wife of his master. And the master needed to borrow money from him, so he said, send me your wife, I'll give it to her. So he sent the wife to come to get it. He seduced the wife, and she stayed by him for 3 days. The master came and said, where's my wife? So he said, I sent her home. As soon as she came, I don't know exactly what happened, but I heard that there were some teenagers in the street who did things with her. So the master said, what should I do? So he said, if it was up to me, I would divorce her. So he said, what? I have to divorce her, but I have to give her ksuba. I can't afford a ksuba. So he said, I'm going to lend you the money for the ksuba. You could pay me back when you have it. So the master divorced her. The apprentice went ahead and married her. And now he had the guy's wife, and he also owed him the money for the ksuba. When the master came to repay the loan, he didn't have it. So the apprentice said, all right, I'll tell you what, now you come work for me, and then that's how you'll pay off the loan. So you had the wife, formerly of the master, now of the apprentice, living with the apprentice, eating and drinking and being served by the former husband and the former master. And as he would serve them, tears would fall from his eyes into their cups. And because of that outrageous behavior and the fact that nobody protested, the decree was sealed. The Gemara calls this 2 wicks and 1 lamp, a reference to the Maaseh Nus that they did. The Gemara now refers to the halachas of sikrikon. So let's remind ourselves what that is. In the days of the Churban, there were these tough guys that would threaten to kill someone unless he would bribe them, so people would give them their land. Those tough guys were called sikrikon. The land that they acquired was not legally acquired. So somebody else would go and buy that land that would not be a legal acquisition, and the person who bought it would have to pay the original owner because he did not fully agree to give over the land to the sikrikon. It really belongs to him, and if you're going to take his land, you got to pay him for it. Now, says the Gemara, a machlokas as to, is there any circumstance in which we could assume that he really did mean to give it over? So the Gemara says, if he said to acquire it with a kinyan chazaka, meaning go use it, and that's your kinyan, so we assume that that's insincere, was trying to save his life. If, however, he wrote a shtar, so now you have a machlekes. Rav says a shtar is going to be sincere. You You don't write a star unless you really mean to give it over. Shmuel says, no, a star is not a proof, but if he puts a chayes in a star, as he writes in the star, he's responsible to replace the land if something happens to it, if it gets taken away because of a lien, that's a sincere kinyan. Says I have a proof to Shmuel. Another case where gift of land is considered to be insincere is if a wife feels pressure to do it to appease her husband. So if somebody buys land from if the land is brought by the wife into the marriage, somebody buys the land from the wife first and then from the husband, that is her share and then his share. So we assume she wasn't pressured into it and it's a valid sale. If, however, he buys it from the husband first and then from the wife, that's not valid because she was pressured to do it. Now over there, the Brisa says that if, however, she writes a charayas, then it's a valid sale. So you see, a charayas makes us assume that it's a sincere sale, even if there was pressure there. So the Gemara says Rav won't be bothered by this. Rav will answer achrayis just means a document. It just means a star. It doesn't have to mean that there was actually a achrayis written in the star. It's called achrayis because once you have a star, that makes a lot of halachos that stick around, and you can collect in many ways with a star that you can't otherwise. The Gemara now discusses what happens if the buyer has a cheskas gimel shonim. So the halacha is, if you live on and you use someone's possession, someone's land for 3 years, and he doesn't claim anything, that is a proof to a claim that you have that it's legally yours, that you either bought it or he gave it to you. The fact that he didn't say anything for 3 years proves that he knew that it doesn't belong to him. So the Gemara talks about a case where somebody bought the land from the sikrikon. He claims that he paid the original owner. Now, as we learned in the original Mishnah, you don't have to pay full price to the original owner, you only have to pay 1/4. So he claimed that he paid it, and he sat on it, and he ate it for 3 years, and the original owner didn't say, you never paid me. Now, the Brisa doesn't spell out that he claimed that he paid the original owner. The Brisa just says that he was on there for 3 years. Now, then the Brisa says the purchaser went and sold it to someone else, the second lekeach. And now the original owner came to the second lekeach and said, hey, this is my land, the Sakrikan took it away from me, you owe it to me, either you have to give the land back to me or pay me the quarter that you always need to pay. So the second purchaser could say, one second, the first purchaser lived here 3 years and he didn't say anything, so that's a proof that he must have bought it from you. So the Gemara asks, why are we discussing that there's a second purchaser here? What is the second purchaser saying? If he's saying that I know that the first purchaser bought it from you, and therefore I don't have to pay you because of the proof of the 3 years. So the Brisa should tell us that in the first purchaser, if the original owner came to the first lekeach and he said, where's my money? And he said, you sold it to me. I paid you for it already. And the proof is that I was here for 3 years. So that would be a chiddush. We should say that. And if he's talking about where he didn't make a claim, he doesn't say that no, the first purchaser paid you for it. So why should we listen to him? He doesn't say that he paid him for it. Just because you were on land for 3 years doesn't prove anything unless you have a claim to go along with it. So the answer is no. Because it's the second purchaser, he doesn't know if the first person paid or not. And therefore the court will say on his behalf, that the first purchaser must have paid the original owner, because it's the only explanation for why the original owner didn't protest. If, however, the first buyer is there, he knows if he paid or not, he would have to claim that he paid. If he wouldn't claim that he paid, we wouldn't say on our own, well, you were here for 3 years, it must be that you paid. The Gemara now speaks what happens if someone loses his land to an Eved Kichavim, but not because of Sikrikon, that is not forced on the penalty of losing his life. So what's halacha there? So the Gemara says if he loses the land for repayment of an obligation, not a legal obligation most likely, or for anparos, which is without any reason, just the guy grabs it from him, the guy. So the halacha of Sikrikon, which is that somebody who buys it from the akum gets to keep it, that halacha does not apply. We do not assume that the original owner gave it over willingly. We assume that he maintained the ownership, and anybody who buys it from the akum did not legally buy it, and he has to return it to the original owner, and he loses the money that he paid for it. Now, the Brisa says, and then something which was stolen without a reason, it has to stay 12 months with the akum, and then the person who buys it can have it. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? You just told me not. It's a contradiction. So the Gemara says, no, that's going back to Sikrikon. That's saying in the case of Sikrikon, you are allowed to keep it, and you'd assume that's legally yours if 12 months went by. Now, The Gemara quotes Rav Yosef, who says there's no such thing as taking land without a reason in Bavel. The Gemara says, what do you mean? The Akam don't steal land from the Gittin and Bavel? That's not true. They do. The Gemara says, no, it means that there is no halacha of stolen without a reason, which is that you don't have a right to buy it, and you have to return it if you did. There is such a thing, and you can keep it. So it says, what's the reason? So it explains that there are courts in Babel, and if somebody lost his land, he would have legal recourse to go and claim it back. If he didn't do that, he must have willingly given it over. The Gemara now quotes a story which shows this halacha. So the Gemara says there was a valley, meaning a region of land in which there was taxes that was owed to the ruler, and all the people had agreed that they would split the taxes evenly amongst themselves, prorated to the amount of land in the valley that they own. And if somebody leaves or he travels for a while, somebody else will take over the land, farm it, work it, and pay the taxes that are owed. So Mer says that someone left, and Gidul Bar Eloi came in and he took over the land and he agreed to pay it. And he paid 3 years worth of the taxes up front. But after 1 year, the original owner came back. And the original owner now had to pay the taxes again, because if you pay in advance and then you don't end up staying there, the government says the new owner has to pay the money's forfeit. You don't get the money back. So Gidol said, it's not fair. I paid and now you're coming back. I didn't expect you to come back. You owe me for the taxes that I paid. The Machlokes Rishonim here, if only the person who left and came back owed, or if all the people that lived in the valley put the money into one central collection and therefore they still had the money and they should be the ones to return it. Now, the other one, the one who lived there left, came back, said, there's no way I'm going to pay you for it. You were here for 1 year. You used the land, you paid the tax. What goes forward, there's no reason I should pay you for anything. So they went to Rav Papa, who wanted a paskin like Gidol Bar Eloi and give him a document that he could use to collect. So Yeshua said to Rav Papa, if you're guaranteeing that he gets his land back, and he gets the money back that he paid, you're giving him the halacha of sekrikon. You're saying that any money that he gives, he gets it back. We don't have the halacha of sekrikon in a case like this, where it's not a pain of death situation. It's not a real sekrikon. So Rav Yeshua wanted to say, no, Gidol lost his money. He should have not paid up front. The fact that he did is his own problem. The Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah. We saw that the person who buys the land from the Sekrikon has to give 1/4 to the original owner. This calculation comes from the fact that the Sekrikon charge 1/4 less than the value of the land. So when Machlokes Rav and Shmuel, what this quarter means? Is this a quarter milabar or a quarter milagav, which is really a fifth? So that means when the Sekrikon charge, do they charge 1/4 of what you're paying less, which is really 1/5 of the price of the land, or do they charge 1/4 of the price of the land less? And that's the amount that you need to pay, which is really 1/3. So the Gemara says, Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Rav says it is 1/4 of the price, which is really 1/5, and Shmuel says it's 1/4 of the value of the land, which is a true 1/4 of the value. So Machlokes, is it 1/5 or 1/4 of the value of the land? So the Gemara says we have a Mishnah that pretty much goes like Rav. Rav's lashon is when he says you pay 1/4 of the value, 1/4 of the price in land or in money. The expression land or money implies that you take the value that you're paying and 1/4 of that, which is the value, which is 1/4 of what you're paying, which ends up being 1/5 of the actual value. So the Brisa says that. The Brisa pretty much echoes our Mishnah, except it adds that line. So this is what it says. It says it quotes the original teaching, the Mishnah Rishona, and then it says that afterwards came the Beis Din that said that you pay 1/4 unless the owner has the ability to redeem the land himself, and he gets to do it first. You have to allow him first shot. And you can collect either land or you can collect money. And Rebbe got his court, and they paskin that if the land is in possession of Sekrikon for 12 months, then the owner doesn't have priority anymore. Anybody could buy it in front of him. So again, so it says you can collect land or you can collect money, which clearly implies that it's talking about 1/4 of the purchase price. So the Gemara defends Shmuel, no, we're talking about a quarter of the purchase price plus what you end up having to pay to the owner, which is, that's talking money, and that's why it says a quarter of the price in land or in money, but that really adds up to the total value of the land. That's what you pay the Sakikon plus what you pay the original owner, which is the total.